Hey, I've really enjoyed this series so far. It's been really, really cool. I've missed a couple because I've been out of town, but the ones that I have been to, I've really, really enjoyed. And thanks, Caleb. And I think it's because of the practical element to the Ten Commandments, and each speaker has brought something practical that we can take away. And I've really enjoyed that. So hopefully I can follow suit tonight. And tonight we are looking at keeping the peace with our parents, which comes from the commandment, honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land that the Lord has given you. And although tonight I hope to spend a bit of time looking at some practical how-tos, I actually want to start a few thousand years ago because I'm a real believer in context when it comes to the Bible. In fact, I struggle to come to the Bible and read a passage without asking, what's going on? What's the passage saying? What's the biggest story? And the reason is that if we leave out context, we come to some pretty funky ideas about who God is. And the Bible can be a really weird place without context, can't it? I don't know how many of you have come to have a little quiet time, hoping that God would answer a burning question on your mind or give you some encouragement. And, you know, it's a hard place to start. So you kind of just troll through the Bible and kind of think, I don't know, here's something. Indeed, even I am against you, and I will execute judgment in your midst in the sight of the nations. Therefore, fathers will eat their sons in your midst, and sons will eat their fathers. And I will execute judgment among you. And all of you who remain, I will scatter into the winds. I mean, what are you going to think about God when you read that? You know, we've got to look at what's going on. What's the biggest story? And I think this morning, whatever you want, when we look at the Ten Commandments and we look at where they've come from, it's actually going to give us a deeper layer of understanding so that when we do get to the how-tos, we're going to understand it a little bit more. So I want you to imagine that you're Moses in the year that God gave the Israelites the Ten Commandments. So you're Moses. You've had a bit of a hard life, and you're a bit sunburnt because you've been living in the desert. This is where you live. This is your tent in the desert, and this is your donkey. He's having a great time in the desert, and then this is a slightly romanticized picture of the Israelites. Now you're in the desert because God has delivered the Israelites from Egypt and has called you into the desert. Okay, so the Israelites began as a family of 12 brothers going into Egypt. 400 years later, after spending 400 years making pyramids and sphinxes and mud bricks, they're delivered out of Egypt, and Moses is their leader. Okay, so they're in the desert, and God is preparing them for a land of their own. And this is a big deal. I mean, imagine being an Israelite. All you've known is just how to be a slave under Pharaoh. And now God is going to make you a landowner. It's some pretty big stuff. And God is going to call you to the promised land. And this is the promised land. And the deal is that God is going to take the Israelites, a nation of slaves, and he's going to build them into this great nation that's going to be blessed, and it's going to be blessed to be a blessing. Okay, so what do you need before going into the promised land? You've got this nation of slaves. They're going to be this great nation that's supposed to be on this pedestal for the world to see. Well, you need law. So interesting, law. You need a justice system. You need a system of rules around how people are going to treat each other, the consequences of crime and punishment and murder, and you're going to need a social welfare system. You're going to need rules around how to govern the widows and the poor and what's going to happen to them. You're going to need a hygiene system. You're going to need rules around hygiene so that your nation doesn't get swept away in plague. So God gave Moses the law, the Old Testament. And we find that in Exodus and Deuteronomy. And then we get to this. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land that your Lord God is giving you. And I hope that makes a little bit more sense now that we've had a look at the context. But God is saying, hey guys, here's the deal. Your mission is to be a great nation. So that the whole world sees who you are, that they say, man, there's something different about that nation. They do things differently. And your mission is going to be fulfilled by following these commandments and these laws. And so this commandment is the how-to of how you're going to achieve that mission. If each generation looks after the generation above them, if they honor that generation, then your families are going to last and they're going to function well, and you're going to be this great society. So go take this law, be a shining light in the world for all to see, and so that they may know me. Well, it's kind of hard to look back and think, gee, okay, Dan, that's a pretty unique scenario. And it's hard for us to relate to the Israelites, doesn't it? I mean, we've got nothing in common, apart from the fact that it's fashionable to grow beards again. But I want us to see that the church and the Israelites are actually very, very similar and have actually got a lot more in common than you might think. You see, we too have the same mission, to go into the world and to be a shining light. And the commandment is still the same, to love one another, to honor our parents. We see Jesus using this sort of language. You are the salt of the earth. You are a light of the world. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify the Father in heaven. And we see Paul writing to the church in Ephesus, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and the instruction of the Lord. And instead of having a big rule book, God has given his law by his Spirit to us in here. And he says the same thing. He says, take my Spirit within you and go into the world. Shine your light. Show the world what love looks like, how to do family well, how to honor your parents. So they may say, hang on, there's something different about those people. So I want us to see that this commandment to honor our mother and father is bigger than just a personal covenant for the benefit of our own families. There's a bigger picture going on here. We are the church, and we've got a mission to accomplish. Well, like many things in life, things like family aren't easy, are they? And parents can be pretty hard to get on with. Siblings can be hard to get on with. And I hear that kids, just a whole new ball game. And I think that's when the church comes in, and that we have this community around us to help us, because things really aren't easy. And as a side note, I think it's really unfair that people call families with divorced parents broken families. And I think that's really unfair because we're all broken. And there are so many families that are together but are so far dysfunctional more than the broken ones. We all need help. And at this church, it's great. We've got parenting courses and relationship courses and counselors and people with big beards who can share wisdom and things like that. And it's really important to tap into that. And there's some great advice circulating in society about how to keep a good family. I've really been enjoying this ad.
This thing is actually the problem. I'm constantly being interrupted by either a phone, an email. We don't have a lot of time, so it's precious that when we're with our families, that it is actual family time. No one wants to do anything until you push them, you get them out off the couch. We're not even out the gate, and we're having a whole lot of fun, and we're talking about different things that we normally wouldn't discuss. Gee, it makes you feel good. So here's the deal. Hyundai's come up with what I think is a really groovy and very cool initiative, and it's called Hyundai Power Off Family On Weekend. Everything, no screens, full stop, gone for a weekend. Ooh, that sounds pretty scary. But I guarantee you, if you do that, that is going to be like an epiphany. It's going to be something that you start thinking about. Maybe we do that every month. No screens, just family, good times.
I think everyone wants a happy family and a family that functions well. And it's really cool to see these sorts of campaigns going on. People saying, hey, look, let's pause and prioritize and make sure we make what is really important top of our priorities. Now, getting rid of your cell phone is a good start, but I want to have a look at a couple of other how-tos tonight. The first is forgiveness, and I really like this quote by Anne Lamott. She says, at family gatherings, when you suddenly feel suicidal or homicidal, remember that in half of all cases, it's a miracle that this annoying person ever lived. Has anyone else felt homicidal or suicidal at family gatherings? And I like this bit, Earth is forgiveness school. You may as well start at the dinner table. You know, hurts and disappointments are a part of everyday life, aren't they? Frustrations, and especially true when it comes to our family, the people closest to us. And so if we're to love our parents, honor our parents, have good relationships within our family, we're going to need to be pretty good at forgiving, because everyone is human and everyone needs forgiveness. Now, I think forgiveness is quite a difficult thing and it's quite a complex idea. But I want to share with you something that I was taught by a counselor once that I think was really helpful. She said, Dan, I want you to write a letter. I want you to write a letter to the person that's hurt you. I want you to say that you love them, what you feel that they've done to you, how you feel about that, how you responded, and that despite what's happened, you still love them. And then I want you to take that letter and burn it or throw it away. Don't actually send it. And it's kind of a strange request as well, isn't it? You know, kind of an odd idea, writing a letter essentially to yourself. And the posture isn't, hey mum, hey dad, here's this list of things that I've noted over the last 27 years. Let me tell you about them. And you play the victim. It's not like that. It's, hey, look, things have arisen between us. And these things put walls up in between us. And I don't want walls in my relationships. And so I want to deal with these things in the past. I want to deal with these hurts and these frustrations. And I want things to be right again. So I took this funny idea, because I'd actually never done it. And I wrote a letter to my parents this week. I wrote more than Dear Mum and Dad with a date on it, but I didn't want to put the whole letter up there. And I have a really good relationship with my parents, so it wasn't 5 pages or more. But I just thought I'd bring up a couple of things that had bugged me, or things that I knew that I hadn't reacted so well to. And I tell you that it was an amazing, empowering experience. And ironically, I left feeling more appreciative of my parents and feeling more grateful for who they were, which is strange because I thought I'd feel the opposite. But I said, hey mum, hey dad, I love you. Here are a couple of things that I've struggled with. I'm sorry that I haven't responded well. I've built up resentment. I've done X, Y, and Z, but I want things to be right between us, and I'm sorry, and I forgive you for the things that you've done also. And it was a really empowering experience for me. So I just want to encourage any of you here tonight who are holding on to things that have happened, and it doesn't need to be with your parents, it can be with anyone. that is holding, that you've got inside, that is acting as a wall between you and that person. And write a letter and throw it out. Sometimes we need to bring things up with other people, but sometimes we just need to process things, even if it's to ourselves. If anyone does that this week, please just let me know. Let me know if it works for other people, not just me. And that'd be great. The second thing is learning how to love. We might all say that we love our parents and we want to honor and respect them. But knowing how to do that is another thing. You know, when I got married to Melissa almost 2 years ago, I thought that if I did the dishes and mowed the lawns and cleaned up the room and cooked nice meals, that she would feel loved. And I had to learn that wasn't, you know, she liked those things and she still encourages me to do those on a regular basis. But that's not the primary way that Melissa feels loved. She loves it when I initiate time with her, some quality time when we go out and do something fun, that I've thought of her and I've planned something. Because Melissa feels most love when she's got quality time. And I think that's true for all of us. We all feel love in a very different way. Some of us love vocal encouragement, saying, hey, well done, or you look great. Others hate being encouraged. Some just want a hug or a pat on the back. Some people just want you to cook a meal or mow the lawns for them. And so up here, we have what's known as the 5 love languages. And this dialogue and research has actually been out for a few years now. And so these are 5 most common ways that people feel loved and honored. One is receiving gifts. So obviously, just a chocolate bar, a sneaky bottle of wine, or something small like that. The second is words of affirmation. Just telling someone, hey, I think you did a really good job, or you look great today. Others, acts of service, making a meal or doing something helpful for someone. The fourth is physical touch. Again, just a hug or a pat on the back, or something that is really powerful for some people, just to feel that they're loved. And then the last is quality time, full attention with someone. And I know that when I go to Auckland to visit my parents who live up there, if I want to honor my mum, if I want to make her feel loved, well, then I need to take her out for a coffee or a long walk, and I need to talk to her and do lots and lots of talking and affirm her in our conversation, because that's how she feels loved. Now, if I did that to Dad, the coffee would last about 3 minutes. There'd be about 10 words exchanged between us. Because for Dad, he's a real acts of service person. I really need to get into the garden, help him with the latest building project, or clean up the kitchen for him or something. And that's the way he feels most loved. So maybe this week, you could just take some time to observe how your parents most feel loved. And again, try it out. See what happens. Say, I love you in their language. Now the last how-to, I don't have a slide for, a title for, but instead I want you to meet this lady here. This lady's 91. She grew up in the back hills of Gisborne. Her first husband died of a heart attack. Her second husband died of cancer. And her third husband died of dementia. She's got a great laugh, loves music, and has a tendency to say awfully offensive things to her daughter-in-law. And this woman is my grandma. And that's my uncle, standing next to her at my brother's wedding. And last Thursday, I pulled her into the rest home where she lives, into Melrose, and I brought her an Easter egg. And she loves it when I visit her. Because I'm the only family member in Tauranga, my parents have been living in Auckland for the last 10 years, where they were looking after my other grandma who died last year. So, she lives a pretty lonely life. You can just imagine it. sitting in her unit, alone. Most of her friends are either dying or have died, and so she doesn't get many visitors. And so I pull in and I give her this Easter egg, and I'm trying to give her some quality time. And it's so hard when you pack your life so full of stuff that your mind always seems to be somewhere else. You know, I'm sitting there and there's this distracting noise outside that's on my mind. I'm thinking about how long it's going to take for me to get home in Easter traffic, pack my bags, drive to Auckland so that I can fly to Christchurch in the morning for some awesome Easter holiday. And while I'm sitting there distracted, she says, Dan, I had onions for dinner. So it's in my eyes. She said, Dan, growing old is not fun. We had a lot of onions. It took ages to chop them all. Whew. And she said, if there was a switch that I could flick, I would. And I would just be gone. And, what do you say to that? And I, well, sorry, Nana, I've got to go on, get on with my busy, awesome life. And anyway, I walk out of her apartment and I find out what this distracting noise is. There's someone in my car. My car is running and there is a shiny thing in the back. And I don't know what this is. And it's not completely impossible because I always leave my car, the keys in the ignition. But as I get closer to the car, I see that the shiny thing is a Zimmer frame. And there is an old guy in the front of my car with his cardigan on the passenger seat. And the car is running, and I'm a bit confused. I say something stupid like, "Hi, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm driving home." I said, "Oh, you're in my car." No, this is my car. And fair enough too. He probably owned my car about 50 years ago. And Nana kind of hears what's going on, and he comes out, and we gently pull this very elderly man out of my car who's suffering from dementia, and we bring him into Nana's apartment, and man, it was funny. I'm missing a note, but that's all right. She said, "You're Peter, aren't you?" And he said, "Yep, I'm Peter the Ether." She said, "Peter the pumpkin eater." And he said, "Peter the pumpkin eater, I had a wife and I couldn't keep her, so I put her in a pumpkin shell, and there I did her well." And as they laughed over this strange nursery rhyme that they exchanged when they were kids, she turned at me and winked at me, and as if to say, "Dan, don't worry, I've got this sorted out. I'll take care of him." And she took him into her apartment, sat him down, gave him a cup of tea, and called the nurse. And there was something beautiful that happened in that moment. Here was an old lady who had nothing to live for. She was not needed. No one depended on her. No one asked for her advice. And a situation arose when she was needed. Her existence mattered. Her being there was valued. There was a situation and she arose to the occasion. And I saw a part of my grandma that I'd never seen before. And there's a real irony in life, isn't there? We all start off very needy, very dependent. We need someone to feed us, clothe us, change our nappies. And we grow old and we become independent, and then we end our lives being needy, dependent, someone to feed us and shower us, someone to even change our nappies. And here is an opportunity for us to show the love that our parents showed for us, to pay that love back to them as a thank you for the sleepless nights and the time and the effort that they've put into our lives. And I think there's something that really grieves me about our culture. We celebrate individuality, breaking away from our parents, becoming our own people. We celebrate technology and wealth, the fact that we can live in any city that we want. We can live in Beijing or Singapore or London or Paris. And the whole time we can forget that there are these rest homes full of lonely people. And I know that this is a hard conversation to have because it's not always easy. I mean, my parents live in Auckland. We can't always be there. But it's a conversation that we need to start having. We need to start saying, hey, what's wrong with our culture where we're so busy celebrating youth that we forget the old? I mean, these are people who have lived beautiful and meaningful lives, who have been in government or contributed to society or raised kids or taught classrooms, and then all of a sudden they're just pushed to the side, where they wait for the switch to be flicked. This verse was really powerful for me this week. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. Give proper recognition to the widows who are really in need. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn first of all to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. I had a stressful week, busy week, and I was freaking out about this sermon because I was just so behind. And I was just thinking all week, oh man, how am I going to get this done? Friday night, I'm going to have to be working on it. All day Saturday, I'm going to be writing. Saturday night, I've got to be writing. Sunday, I've got to be practicing, learning, writing. And then on Thursday, I found out that there was a surf competition on. And 2 hours of my Saturday just suddenly became free. It was like magic. It was amazing. And I was talking to Reese and Vanessa, and Reese had this longboard that he was going to lend me. And I thought, great, I'm going to go pick it up. I'm going to go surfing. I'm going to have a great time. And then I remembered my grandma sitting alone in her little apartment. And I remember the promise that I'd made to my wife that I was going to prioritize my grandma more. And I cancelled the board on the grounds that the surf was going to be too small, which was half true. And then I rang my grandma and I said, Nana, what are you doing today? And she said, nothing. Surprise. There's this surf comp on. Do you want to come? And she was like, yeah, that would be great, Dan. So I picked her up in the morning and took her to Taste Street, and we sat there drinking coffee and looking at surfboards and watching the surfers, and we had a great time. And I think this verse has really kind of impacted on me, that I really need to look at the priorities of my life. If I'm going to listen to this commandment and put it into practice, that I'm going to need to make some sacrifices. The worship team can come up, but I just want to invite us to think of maybe a family member, a parent, a sibling, maybe one of your own kids. And maybe there's something that you want to give a go this week. Maybe it's writing a letter Maybe it's taking the time to show love in a new way. Or maybe it's simply visiting a rest home this week. We are the church. We are the people of God, called to be holy and righteous. We have the love of God in our hearts. And we're called to go into the world and be a shining light and example. So this week, I hope that people might say to the church, man, there's something different about them. Something different in the way that they forgive people. Something about the way that they love so intentionally. Something in the way that they really look after that older generation. So let's just pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for getting me through that after all the onions for dinner. Lord, we're just humbled that you are for us, Lord, that you want our societies and our families to work. And we're so grateful that you give us the Holy Spirit in our hearts to soften our hearts and renew our minds. Lord, as we consider the calling that you have given the church, we ask for grace and humility, because none of us are perfect. Lord, may your Spirit just soften our hearts and open our ears this week. We might be moved to love in a new way. May we honour our parents.